Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something that feels, well, chillingly plausible: a war between the United States and Iran. We'll be breaking down an argument from the channel's Second Thought, which digs deep to ask what the real motivations behind a conflict like this could actually be. So, the source material we're looking at kicks things off with a bang. Literally. It opens with this simulated news broadcast describing a massive, coordinated attack on Iran. It drops you right into the middle of a war that's already started, setting the stage for a really high-stakes situation. And right off the bat, that shocking scenario makes you ask two huge questions. These are really the core of the entire investigation that this source presents. How on earth did we get to this point? And maybe more importantly, why? What are the real reasons this would happen? Now, according to the source, this hypothetical conflict isn't something that just happens overnight. It's not a surprise. Instead, it's framed as the final move in a plan that has been on the books for a very, very long time. And to back that up, they bring in this really powerful quote from General Wesley Clark, a former top NATO commander. He talks about seeing a memo way back in 2001 that he says laid out a whole military roadmap, with Iran listed as the final target. Okay, so if a war like this were to happen, what would be the official reasons we'd hear on the news? The source we're looking at identifies two main arguments that would almost certainly be presented to the public. First up, the big one, the one you'd hear about constantly, the nuclear threat. The argument would be that Iran is right on the verge of getting a nuclear bomb, and that's a threat so big it has to be stopped with military force, right now. And then there's the second angle, the one that pulls at the heartstrings, a humanitarian intervention. This justification would be all about morality, about the need to go in and save the Iranian people, to protect protesters from their own government. So after laying out these official reasons, the source basically says, okay, let's take a closer look. And well, it then spends a good chunk of its time trying to systematically dismantle them, arguing that these justifications just don't hold up under scrutiny. This is really fascinating. The source compiles all these different predictions about when Iran will get a nuclear weapon. And what you see is a pattern, right? The deadline is always just around the corner. It's been weeks away, months away, years away. The argument here is that it's a constantly shifting goalpost, designed to keep the threat feeling immediate and urgent. And this slide really gets to the heart of the counterargument on the nuclear issue. It shows this massive contradiction. On one hand, you have the public claim that Iran is actively trying to build a bomb. But on the other hand, the source points to U.S. intelligence reports that have stated Iran actually stopped its weapons program all the way back in 2003. So the source draws a straight line from this to the justifications for the Iraq war. The conclusion it comes to is pretty stark, that the threat of an Iranian nuclear weapon is a lot like the WMDs in Iraq, a manufactured excuse to justify a pre-planned war. Okay, so what about that humanitarian argument? To push back on that, the analysis points to the immediate brutal cost of the war itself. In this hypothetical scenario, it claims that 1,000 Iranian civilians are killed by bombs in just the first 2 weeks. And then it zooms out, looking at the bigger picture from other recent wars. The source argues that history shows us that these interventions lead to an absolutely catastrophic loss of life. You're not just talking about direct deaths from violence, but millions more who die from the collapse of society, things like disease and starvation. The argument is that the cure ends up being far, far deadlier than the disease. All right, if the source is arguing that the official reasons don't hold water, then what's really going on? What are the real motives? This is where the analysis proposes a completely different set of drivers. Yeah, this is the central question, isn't it? If you take self-defense and humanitarianism off the table, you're forced to ask, why would anyone undertake such a massive and destructive war? There has to be another reason. And this is where the analysis lays out what it claims are the three real reasons for the conflict. It argues that it's all about geopolitics with China, huge profits for corporations, and securing regional dominance for Israel. First up, it's all about geopolitics. The source argues a major goal is to weaken China's economy by cutting off its oil. See, Iran and Venezuela supply about 17% of China's oil imports. A war would throw a massive wrench into that supply chain. Reason number two? Money. A lot of money. The argument here is that war is just incredibly profitable for some companies. We're talking $2 to $3 billion a day. And that money, taken from taxpayers, goes straight to defense contractors who sell things like a single F-15 jet for $100 million. And finally, we get to what the source presents as maybe the biggest driver of all, ensuring Israel's dominance in the region. To make this point, it uses this direct quote attributed to Benjamin Netanyahu, arguing that taking Iran off the board as a regional competitor has been a strategic goal for decades. So, after making this really provocative case, the video doesn't just leave you hanging. It pivots to a final, crucial question. So, what now? What are we supposed to do with this information? And what's interesting is that the advice here isn't to go out and protest in the streets. It's much more grassroots. It's about starting conversations. Talk to your friends, your family. Just plant little seeds of doubt about the official story. Remind people that we've heard this time is different before, only for it to end in disaster. And that really is the final, powerful question that this explainer leaves us with. It's a challenge, right? It asks us to look at the patterns of history and really question if we should believe that this time it's going to be different. It's a call to think critically and demand better answers before just accepting the drums of war.